For NYUpSyracuse.com, this is Matt Parrino, and I'm joined by Ryan Talbot, and we are almost there, almost a week away from the 2019 NFL Draft. The Buffalo Bills have the number 9 overall selection, and next up, we're going to move to an edge rusher. Mississippi State's Montez Sweat, a guy that performed at the Senior Bowl. His stock started to really rise at the Senior Bowl, and it's slowly been climbing ever since. Appearing as high as maybe even number 5 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a few mock drafts. And he's a guy that, if he does fall to number 9, that's not only a player, but a position that the Bills have to seriously consider about adding just because of, the situation they find themselves in at the defensive end position. You have Jerry Hughes entering a contract year. You have Shaq Lawson, who the Bills have yet to get his 5th-year option done. With this Bills team last year, there was some, as good as this defense was, at times I felt like the pass rush lacked a little bit of that, firepower, as good as Jerry Hughes was.
Yeah, I like Sweat's game a lot. You already mentioned his stock has been on the rise. 22 and a half sacks in the last 2 seasons. Outstanding performance at the Senior Bowl. And then he stole the show at the Combine. I mean, here's a guy who's built like a prototypical 4-3 defensive end in Buffalo's system, about 260 pounds, and he runs a 4.41 40-yard dash. If that doesn't open up some eyes, I mean, he outran some notable wide receivers, some notable running backs, some notable tight ends, and he did it all at 260 pounds. So he's this guy that I think, one, isn't being talked about enough as a legitimate top 10, even top 5 prospect. He's a guy that I think fills a sneaky need for the Bills. I don't think enough people talk about defensive end being a need because you've already mentioned it, but Hughes could be on his way out at the end of the season. Shaq Lawson's 5th-year option is up in the air. Trent Murphy had a disappointing first season. So there's a lot of question marks there. And the other thing I'll say is in this year's draft class, once those top 3, top 4, maybe top 5 edge rushers go off the board, the depth really takes a hit and the talent really takes a hit.
Mm-hmm. And that's where, it's going to be on Brandon Beane to kind of manage, the top of that first round and just kind of see how things are playing out. It seems that Kyler Murray's going to go number 1, and then if you have a couple more quarterbacks go in that top 10, it seems like it's becoming less and less likely all of a sudden. But prognostications aside, you never know what's going to happen when that draft starts. And all of a sudden, if you have 2 or 3 quarterbacks go in that first round or in that first 10 picks, there could be some serious consideration to a slight trade back for that fourth quarterback at 9, and then you're talking about getting whoever you have. And Brandon Beane talked about it the other day. It's all about how many guys, you have at the top of your board. And if you think that there's a chance that they can be there by trading down a few picks. And it's also about, what are the weaknesses? What are the red flags? I mean, you look at Montez Sweat, and it's a guy that was dismissed from Michigan State. There are some concerns on his scouting reports about maturity, which I think that's something that is a major red flag with Brandon Beane. He even spoke about it at his press conference the other day. Whether it be underclassmen or seniors, we're looking for guys that are going to come in here, be at a level of maturity where they can do their job. We can trust them to do their job. Tremaine Edmonds was an underclassman last year, but there was not really many guys in that locker room that was more dialed in, dedicated to learning his craft and getting better. And those are the kind of players that I feel like this regime really covets. And I think that, it'll depend how the meetings that have happened with Montez Sweat have gone, going all the way back to the Combine. But that is an issue to think about when you're talking about a potential prospect.
Yeah, Beane has said in the past that he's taken players off of his draft board altogether if there's character concerns. But like you said, you go back to the Combine, they talk to him there. You go back, and I'm sure they've done their due diligence in terms of talking to his former coaches, teammates, things of that nature to see what type of teammate is he. Has he grown in the last year or two? Are there still maturity issues? Because you really can't miss as a general manager on first-round picks very often, because if you do, you'll be out of a job.
I kind of sit back as we're going through all of these players at different positions and look at this team, from a 30,000-foot view. And it's so difficult at times to, as much as we talked about these defensive players, I understand, the need to replace a Kyle Williams, to, potentially look ahead and figure out a solution at edge rusher, and even some depth at linebacker, and potentially even safety as you look down the line. But, this offense was 30th in the league last year, and depending on where your board stacks up, I mean, most boards have a TJ Hawkinson, and some have Jonah Williams or some other offensive lineman ranked ahead of Montez Sweat. I think that this is where it gets very tricky, and it will test Brandon Beane in his adamant persistence of best player available, and that's the route that they're going to go, and the only route that can lead to success in this league. You're going to be tested there when you get to a pick like 9 and you have a Hawkinson, a Williams, and a Sweat there, where you have them ranked and how closely they are, because of positions of needs are important. You got to fill those as well in the draft and in free agency at the end of the day.
I love the draft as much as anyone, but I'm almost looking forward to after the draft, where we can hear from Beane himself on these decisions. How close was it with this other prospect in terms of, if it's not Hawkinson, a guy that checks all the boxes in terms of culture, in terms of position of need, in terms of talent. What wasn't close on the board there? What was your feelings about that? So that's the other part of the draft that I really like, is when you unpack it all at the end of it. I am really looking forward to seeing if defensive end is high on their list, which it would obviously be if they took a Montez Sweat in round 1, or if it's something where they feel comfortable with the room they have now and it's maybe something they go back to the drawing board on next year, or even if it's a trade possibility, because you still have guys like Clowney who are out there who reportedly aren't close to a new deal. You have a guy like Frank Clark who's out there who does Seattle have the money to give him a long-term deal after paying Russell Wilson? So little things like that. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Exciting time of year, Ryan Talbot. Thank you so much. And guys, for all your Buffalo Bills content, as always, keep it locked on the NY Up and Syracuse.com.